Krishna Hare
Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare.
Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopikanta Radha Kanta Namostute तप्त कंचन गौरंगी राधे राधेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये तुलसी राधे गोलोकानंद भगवान की
जय।
श्रीमद् भागवतम की
जय।
कृष्णा हरे कृष्णा प्रवीण जी
हरे कृष्ण प्रभु जी। हरे कृष्ण।
हरे कृष्णा जय
हरे कृष्णा
हरे कृष्णा रीना जी
हरे कृष्णा भैया, हरे कृष्णा एवरीवन।
हरे कृष्णा तरुण सो लास्ट वीक हम लोग वी आर रीडिंग कैंटो 4 फोर्थ बुक पे हैं हम लोग एंड वी आर रीडिंग 9 चैप्टर ऑफ कैंटो 4 या और लास्ट वीक हम लोग श्लोक 34 पढ़ रहे थे एंड जैसा कि हम लोग पढ़ रहे हैं इन दिस अध्याय नारद मुनि इज talking to King Prachin Bhaishya. Yeah. So he is giving the transcendental knowledge to King Prachin Bhaishya. In previous chapters, he took example of King Puranjan, and then he explained how King Puranjan, in the form of this body, and this body was treated like a big shahar, and in that shahar there are like 9 gates, right? So like we know there are 9 holes in the body. Yeah. And then how many karmendriyas?
9
Yeah.
5 कर्मेंद्रिय 5 ज्ञानेंद्रिय.
Right? So we have 5 karmendriya and 5 gyanendriyas. And what are those 5 gyanendriyas? Which are those?
eyes, nose,
Eyes,
skin,
nose,
ear, nose,
skin,
tongue,
ear, and tongue. Yeah, those are the senses. Senses by which we want to enjoy this materialistic world.
गले के ऊपर जितनी सब ज्ञानेंद्रिय.
Yeah. And then karmendriya helps, and then karmendriya plus gyanendriya plus the mind, man, the 11 senses come together to do everything. And then we saw there are like 9 holes in the body, like mouth and eyes and all that. So there are a lot of knowledge. And then also we read last week, depending on the karmas, right? Using all these karmendriyas and gyanendriyas and man and intelligence, we are doing all these karmas. And based on karmas, we take birth in different species. And then we saw there are like 14 planets, yeah? So we saw there are 14 planets and 6 are above us, right? So do you remember the name now of the planets above us? So ours is Bhulok, right? Prithvilok. And above Bhu, what do we have? So that's easy to remember, right? Because we all know the Gayatri mantra. So Bhur, Bhuva. Yeah? So Bhu is Prithvi, Bhuva is the sky, and then beyond that Swar, the Swarglok, right? And the Swarglok is where the Lord in Indra resides with all the devatas. And then above that we have Maharlok. Yeah? Then we have Janlok, Taplok, and what is the highest lok?
Satyalok.
Satyalok, yeah? And who resides in Satyalok?
Lord Vishnu.
So Lord Brahma resides in
Brahma.
Satyalok. Lord Brahma, right? So it's also known as Brahmalok.
Brahmalok, yeah.
Satyalok is also known as Brahmalok. So Lord Vishnu does not reside in this materialistic world. These 14 planets are part of the materialistic world, including Brahmalok, right? And beyond that is where the spiritual planets start, and that's where Vaikuntha is where Lord Vishnu resides. So anyways, I mean, those were some knowledge we were building up, right? But Narad Muni is giving this knowledge to Prachin Bhaishya, and so last shlok was 34th, where we were reading that Narad Muni continued, "Oh, you who are free from all sinful activity, no one can counteract the effects of fruitive activity simply by manufacturing a different activity devoid of Krishna consciousness." Yeah, basically we cannot have some action and some other actions and then think the actions will get nullified. All that is not going to happen till we are in the bhakti of Krishna consciousness, is what is being mentioned here. All such activities due to our ignorance. When we have a troublesome dream, we cannot relieve it with a troublesome hallucination. One can counteract a dream only by awaking. Similarly, our material existence is due to our ignorance and illusion. Our material existence is due to our ignorance and illusion. What is the real existence? What's our real existence? That we are not this materialistic body. Yeah? The real existence is we are eternal, we are the soul. Yeah? Right? That's the whole story of King Puranjan. That's what Narad Muni is explaining. That all these materialistic things are due to the three gunas, Satogun, Rajogun, and Tanogun. And soul getting conditioned with the material world, right? So the real existence is the soul, the eternal soul, which is part and parcel of the super soul. Yeah, Lord Vishnu, Lord Krishna. Yeah. So unless we awaken to Krishna consciousness, we cannot be relieved of such dreams. Right? So what Narad Muni is essentially saying that our materialistic senses enjoying is essentially a dream. It's not the truth. Yeah. For the ultimate solution to all problems, we must awaken to Krishna consciousness, is what is being mentioned by Narad Muni. That's the shlok we read last week. So let's start with shlok 35. Praveenji?
हाँ
Praveen?
हाँ प्रभु जी। हेलो हेलो
Praveen, we can hear you actually. So,
should I begin? अर्थे ह्यविद्यमानेऽपि संसृतिर्न निवर्तते मनसा लिंगरूपेण स्वप्ने विचरतो यथा. Sometimes we suffer because we see a tiger in a dream or a snake in a vision. But actually, there is neither a tiger nor a snake. Thus, we create some situations in a subtle form and suffer the consequences. The sufferings cannot be mitigated unless we are awakened from our dream. Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, thank you, Prabhuji. So basically what is being mentioned in our dream, sometimes we get some bad dream and we suffer, but it's not a fact. Right? But when we get up, yeah, we resolve that situation. And that's what is being mentioned about the materialistic world as well. Yeah, very nice purport actually. So let's read this. Tarun?
Stated in the Vedas, the living entity is always separate from two kinds of material bodies, the subtle and the gross. All our sufferings are due to these material bodies. This is explained in Bhagavad Gita. Mantra sparsas tu kaunteya chitoshna sukha dukha dah agama payino nityas tam stititsasva Bharata. O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, O scion of Bharata, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. Lord Krishna thus informed Arjuna that all the distresses brought about by the body come and go. One has to learn how to tolerate them. Material existence is the cause of all our sufferings, for we do not suffer once we are out of the material condition. The Vedas therefore enjoin that one should factually understand that he is not material but is actually Brahman. Aham Brahmasmi. This understanding cannot be fully realized unless one is engaged in Brahman activities, namely devotional service. To get free from the material conditions, one has to take to Krishna consciousness. That is the only remedy. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Tarun. So what is mentioned in the Vedas, is that the living entity is separate from two kinds of material bodies. And there are two kinds of material bodies. One is the shuttle and one is the gross. What is the shuttle body?
Sukshma Sharir.
Suksham Sharir, And Suksham Sharir is composed of, what are the three elements of Suksham Sharir? So let's look at the gross first, right? The gross body is the Sthul Sharir. This physical body which we see is the gross body, and this is made up of the 5 elements, which we know. Prithvi, Akash, Jal, Agni, and Vayu. That's the Sthul Sharir. Under that, another layer is the Suksham Sharir.
That is Man, Buddhi, and Ahankar.
Right, So Suksham Sharir is Man, which is mind, Buddhi, which is intelligence, and Ahankar, which is self-ego. So that is the Suksham Sharir. So our material body is Suksham Sharir and the Sthul Sharir. But the layer below that is the living entity, which is the soul. And that's what Vedas is saying. Now, but why are we suffering? Because we don't realize that we are the soul. We realize that we are the material bodies. And that's why we are suffering. And that's what even Lord Krishna is telling this to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita as well. So now the point is, how do we get rid of that? This understanding cannot be fully realized. What understanding? That Aham Brahmasmi. Actually Brahma, that is your soul, cannot be realized unless one is engaged in Brahma activities. And what are the Brahma activities? Is the devotional service. That's the Bhakti Yoga. That's what is being mentioned. So to get free from the material conditions, one has to take Krishna consciousness. That is the only remedy. Is what is being mentioned here. Rinaji?
अथर्वभूतस्य यतो अनर्थ परंपरा संस्कृतिस्तद्वयवच्छेदो भक्त्या परमया गुरो वासुदेवे भगवती भक्ति योगः समाहितः सधृचिनेन वैराग्यं ज्ञानं च जनयिष्यते. The real interest of the living entity is to get out of the nescience that causes him to endure repeated birth and death. The only remedy is to surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead through his representative. Unless one renders devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, one cannot possibly become completely detached from this material world, nor can he possibly manifest real knowledge. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So who is saying this? Who is speaking right now?
Narad
Muni. Narad Muni is giving this spiritual message to King Prachin Bhishar. And then we read the whole story about the Prachetas and Lord Shiva's Stuti and all that, right? Prachetas are sons of King Prachin Bhishar. So what Narad Muni is saying is that one possibly cannot be detached, yeah, unless one renders devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. Yeah, says here Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Samahita Sagri Chinena Vairagyam Jnanam Cha Jan Yishyati. Right? So you cannot get anything, Vairagya or Gyan or anything without devotional service. Again, very nice purport, but let's just see. Says here Vasudevi Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janatyashu Vairagyam Jnanam Cha Yat Hetukam. By rendering devotional service unto the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge. How do you acquire knowledge? Is also by surrendering to Lord Krishna and detachment from the world also, right? So thus, one must engage in the service of Vasudeva without material desire, mental speculation, or fruitive activity. Yeah, is what is being mentioned, right? Ajay?
Sure. So Acharadev Rajarshre Syad Dachyut Kathathrayah Shramrtah Shraddhanasya Nityada Syad Dhiyatah. O best of kings, one who is faithful, who is always hearing the glories of Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is always engaged in the culture of Krishna consciousness and hearing of Lord's activities, very soon becomes eligible to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, so very important fact mentioned here by Narad Muni himself. Someone becomes eligible to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. Yeah, Narad Muni is saying that. How does that happen? Katha Ashraya hai. Yeah, one who is hearing the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Like when we are reading Srimad Bhagavatam, what is Srimad Bhagavatam? Which we are reading is nothing but Katha about Bhagwan. Yeah, Srimad Bhagavatam is the Katha of Bhagwan. In this is where we are reading about various avatars of Lord Krishna, of Lord Vishnu, right? And so many stuti we have already read by so many great people, right? Like we saw the stuti by Bhishma Pitamaha, stuti by Kunti, stuti by Lord Brahma himself, by Lord Shiva himself, right? And we will read about all the avatars of Lord Krishna. That is the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, right? Like we have already read about the Varaha, Lord Varaha story, right? So that is the Katha Ashraya. Then Srinvata Saddhanasya Nityada. Nityada. Yeah, always engaged in the culture of Krishna consciousness will become eligible to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, face to face. Yeah, is what Narad Muni is saying that constant engagement in the transcendental loving service of Vasudeva means constantly hearing the glories of the Lord, the principles of Bhakti Yoga, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, yeah, Dashyam, Sakhyam, Atma Nivedanam. Yeah, those are the nine Paddhati of Bhakti Yoga. Yeah, are the only means by which perfection can be attained. Simply by hearing the glories of the Lord, one is elevated to the transcendental position. Yeah, simply by hearing of the glories of the Lord, one is elevated to the transcendental position. Yeah. Sachin?
Hare Krishna. Yatra Bhagavata Rajan Sadhavu Vishadashayah Bhagavad Gunanukathana Shravana Vyagra Chetasah Tasmin Hanmukharita Madhu Vicharita Charitra Piyusha Shesha Saritah Paritah Stravanti Taye Pibantya Vitrusho Nrupa Gadha Karne Stanna Sprushantya Shanatrud Bhaya Shoka Moha. A little bit down. Okay. My dear king, in the place where pure devotees live, following the rules and regulations and thus purely conscious and engaged with great eagerness in hearing and chanting the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in that place, if one gets a chance to hear their constant flow of nectar, which is exactly like the waves of a river, one will forget the necessities of life, namely hunger and thirst, and become immune to all kinds of fear, lamentation, and illusion. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. So there are places where pure devotees live. Yeah. And those places are constantly engaged in hearing and chanting of the glories of the Lord. And if we get a chance to hear that constant flow of nectar, right, which is the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, then what happens? Yeah, we become immune to all kinds of fear, lamentation, and illusion, is what is mentioned. Very nice purport. So let's read this, Tarun.
The cultivation of Krishna consciousness is possible where great devotees live together and constantly engage in hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord. In a holy place like Vrindavana, there are many devotees constantly engaged in chanting and hearing the glories of the Lord. If one gets a chance to hear from pure devotees in such a place, allowing the constant flow of the river of nectar to come from the mouths of pure devotees, then the cultivation of Krishna consciousness becomes very easy. When one is engaged in constantly hearing the glories of the Lord, it certainly rises above the bodily conception. When one is in the bodily conception, he feels the pangs of hunger and thirst, fear, lamentation, and illusion. But when one is engaged in hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord, it transcends the bodily conception. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. So one place mentioned is like Vrindavan. So when you go to Vrindavan, it's not about visiting Vrindavan, right? When you go to Vrindavan, you see lots of saints who are talking about glories of Radha and Krishna. Yeah. And that's the chance we get to hear. You go to Rishikesh, you see a lot of ashrams of saints. And that's the place, right? You hear the nectar, yeah, to come from the mouth of pure devotees. What is important is to hear it from a pure devotee, not about the intellectual thing, not about somebody speaking nicely or something, but the fact is hearing from the mouth of a pure devotee about Krishna consciousness. Yeah. And so let's continue to reading it. Tina ji?
The word Bhagavad Gunanukathana Sravana Vyagraha Chetana Sah, meaning always eager to find the place where the glories of the Lord are being heard and chanted, is significant in this verse. A businessman is always very eager to go to a place where business is transacted. Similarly, a devotee is very eager to hear from the lips of liberated devotees. As soon as one hears the glories of the Lord from the liberated devotees, he immediately becomes impregnated with Krishna consciousness. This is also confirmed in another verse. Satam prasannagan mama. I need to just a little bit, give me time. Mama virya samavido bhavanti rita karna rasayana kathana taj jusanad asva aparvargraha vratamani Shraddha Ratir Bhaktir Anukamashyati. The association of pure devotees, discussion of the pastimes and activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is very pleasing and satisfying to the ear and to the heart. By cultivating such knowledge, one gradually becomes advanced on the path of liberation, and thereafter he is freed and his attraction becomes fixed. Then real devotion and devotional service began. Bhagavad Gita 3.25.25. In the association of pure devotees, one becomes attached to hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord. In this way, one can cultivate Krishna consciousness, and as soon as this cultivation is advanced, one can become faithful to the Lord, devoted to the Lord, and attached to the Lord, and thus one can very quickly attain full Krishna consciousness. The secret of success is the cultivation of Krishna consciousness is hearing from the right person. A Krishna conscious person is never disturbed by the bodily necessities, namely eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, so how the Krishna consciousness can evolve is what has been described. Yeah. Tarun?
Ete रूपद्योतो नित्यं जीवालोका स्वभावजयः न करोति हरेर्नुमां कथामर्थ निध्यो रतिम्. Because the conditioned soul is always disturbed by the bodily necessities such as hunger and thirst, there is very little time to cultivate attachment to hearing the nectarian words of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. So what Narad Muni is telling to King Prajin Bharishat and essentially to all of us, because we are all conditioned souls, we are always disturbed or we are always engaged in the bodily necessities. Yeah. Hunger, thirst, working, whatever. Right? Like we even find little time to do our Srimad Bhagavatam for like a couple of days in a week, right? What happens is we have very little time essentially to cultivate advancement, attachment to hearing the nectarian words of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Tatha Amrita Nidho Ratim, like very little time we are able to take out to really get into the devotional service, is what is being mentioned. Pravinji? Pravinji have? क्या अजय?
Sure. प्रजापतिपतिः साक्षान्दगवान् गिरिशो मनुः दक्षादेह प्रजाध्यक्षा नैष्ठिका सनकादयः मरीचिस्त्र इंगिरोऽसौ पुलस्य पुलः क्रतुः भृगु वसिष्ठे इत्यते मदन्ता ब्रह्मवादिनः अद्यापि वाचस्पत्यस्तपोविद्यासमाभिः पश्यन्तोऽपि न पश्यन्ति पश्यन्तं परमेश्वरम्. The most powerful Lord Brahma, the father of all progenitors, Lord Shiva, Manu, Daksh, and other rulers of humankind, the four saintly first-class brahmacharis headed by Sanak and Santana, the great sages Marichi, Atri, Angira, Pulastya, Pulaha, Kritu, Bhrigu, and Vashisht, and my humble self, Narad, are all stalwart Brahmans who can speak authoritatively on Vedic literature. We are very powerful because of austerities, meditation, and education. Nonetheless, even after inquiring about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whom we always see, we do not know perfectly about him. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, very interesting. What's going on here? Narad Muni is saying, what is Narad Muni saying? That the most powerful Lord Brahma, yeah, says here in the shlok, Prajapati Patihi. Yeah, the Pati, all the Prajapatis originator, Lord Brahma, Sakshat Bhagwan Girisho. Girisho is the Lord Shiva. Yeah, he's like Sakshat Bhagwan. And of course, all the Manu, Daksha, Raja Daksha, right? One of the Prajapatis. Yeah, and then Sanaka there, like all the Sanat Kumars, right? We read they all live on in Janlok. right? And then all the Rishi Munis, was Marichi, Pulashat Muni, Pulahe, Pritu Muni, Bhrigu Muni, Vashishta Muni, Narad Muni himself. What are they saying? They are saying Pashyanto api na pashyanti, Pashyantam Parameshwaram. Like they all see Lord Vishnu, Lord Krishna, even though they see them, say, first of all, he says that we are very powerful, right? Because we know that all the Rishi Munis and Sanat Kumars, Lord Brahma himself, Lord Shiva, no one is more powerful than them, right? And devotional as well. And they are saying, that even after inquiring about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whom we always see, we do not know perfectly about him. So when Narad Muni himself is saying, who can travel any time to Lord Vishnu, and he doesn't know perfectly about Lord Vishnu. And then we have all these other jnanis here on this earth who says they are the God. Right? Doesn't make sense. So, I mean, that's what is being mentioned here. What Narad Muni is saying is that even we don't understand Lord Krishna. And again, very nice purport. So let's read that. Hare Krishna, Isha.
According to the foolish Darwinian theory of the anthropologists, it is said that 40,000 years ago, Homo sapiens had not appeared on this planet because the process of evolution had not reached that point. However, the Vedic histories, the Puranas and Mahabharata, relate human histories that extend millions and millions of years into the past. In the beginning of creation, there was a very intelligent personality, Lord Brahma, and from him emanated all the Manus and the Brahmacharis, like Sanaka and Sanatana, as well as Lord Shiva, the great sages, and Narad. All these personalities underwent great austerities and penances, and thus became authorities in Vedic knowledge. Perfect knowledge for human beings, as well as all living entities, is contained in the Vedas. All the above mentioned great personalities are not only powerful, being cognizant of past, present, and future, but are also devotees. Still, in spite of their great education and knowledge, and despite their meeting the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, they cannot actually understand the perfection of the living entity's relationship with Lord Vishnu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, so as you remember, if you remember the previous cantos, we see how Lord Brahma did tapasya. Yeah, how he went through great austerities and penances for millions of years, right? When Lord Vishnu gave him darshan, and then he, explained the whole spiritual knowledge to Lord Brahma himself, right? So let's continue reading. Sachin.
This means that these personalities are still limited as far as their knowledge of the unlimited is concerned. The conclusion is that simply by advancing one's knowledge, one cannot be accepted as an expert in understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Supreme Personality of Godhead can be understood not by advanced knowledge but by pure devotional service, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 18.55. Bhaktya mama apijanati yamana yassa chasmi tatvatah. Unless one takes to pure transcendental devotional service, he cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead in truth. Everyone has some imperfect ideas about the Lord. So-called scientists and philosophical speculators are unable to understand the Supreme Lord by virtue of their knowledge. Knowledge is not perfect unless one comes to the platform of devotional service. This is confirmed by the Vedic version. Athapi te deva padambuja davya prasada लेसंगृत इव हि जानाति तत्वं भगवं महिम्नो न चन्य एकोपि चिरं विचिन्वन्. हरे कृष्ण.
Hare Krishna. Praveen ji? Okay, Arina ji?
The speculators, the Gyanis, go on speculating about the Supreme Personality of Godhead for many, many hundreds of thousands of years. But unless one is favored by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one cannot understand his supreme glories. All the great sages mentioned in this verse have their planets near Brahmalok, the planet where Lord Brahma resides along with 4 great sages, Sanak, Sanatan, Sanandan, and Sanat Kumar. These sages reside in different stars known as the southern stars, which circle the polar star. The polar star called Dhruvalok is the pivot of this universe, and all planets move around this polar star. All the stars are planets as far as we can see within this one universe. According to Western theory, all the stars are different suns, but according to Vedic information, there's only one sun within this universe. All these so-called stars are but different planets. Besides this universe, there are many millions of other universes, and each of them contains similar innumerable stars and planets. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. Isha?
Abhi-
Oh, sorry,
May I-
Praveen.
Okay. शब्द ब्रह्मण दुष्पारे चारंत उर्विस्तरे मंत्रलिंगैर्व्यच्छिन्नं भजन्तो न विदु परमम्. Despite the cultivation of Vedic knowledge, which is unlimited, and the worship of different demigods by the symptoms of Vedic mantras, demigod worship does not help one to understand the supreme powerful personality of God. Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. It says Bhajanto na viduha param. What it's saying is, by doing all the other worships, we try to gain some materialistic benefits, right? That's why we worship all the different demigods. But that doesn't help us in understanding Lord Krishna. That doesn't help us in getting out of the cycle of birth and death and old age and disease, is what is being mentioned, right? For that, we have to devote to Lord Krishna, is what is being mentioned. Again, a very nice purport. So let's read this, Tarun.
As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Kamesh Tester Pita Jnana Prapadyante Nya Devata Tam Nyamam Astya Prakritya Nitya Swaya. Those whose minds are distorted by material desires surrender unto demigods and follow the particular rules and regulations of worship according to their own natures. Most people are interested in worshipping demigods to acquire powers. Each demigod has a particular power. For instance, the demigod Indra, the king of heaven, has power to shower rain on the surface of the globe to give sufficient vegetation to the earth. This demigod is described in the Vedas. Vajra Hasta Purandaraha. Indra rules the water supply with a thunderbolt in his hand. The thunderbolt itself is controlled by Indra. Similarly, other demigods, Agni, Varuna, Chandra, Surya, have particular powers. All these demigods are worshipped in the Vedic times through a symbolic weapon. Therefore, it is said here, Manta Linge Vachinam. By such worship, karmis may obtain the benediction of material opulence in the form of animals, riches, beautiful wives, many followers, and so on. By such material opulence, however, one cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Okay.
Yada yasya nugrihvanti bhagavanatma bhavitah sajahati matim loke vede cha parinishtitam. When a person is fully engaged in devotional service, he is favored by the Lord who bestows his causeless mercy. At such a time, the awakened devotees gives up all material activities and ritualistic performances mentioned in the Vedas. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. When Bhagwan Atmi Bhavita hai, when one is fully engaged in devotional service, Lord is bestowing his causeless mercy, Karuna Sindhu. Yeah. And again, a very nice purport. but let's just read from here. Yeah, Isha.
The sincere devotee is always helped by the Supersoul, who resides within the heart of every living entity, as Lord Krishna confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upayadite. To those who are constantly devoted and worship me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. This is the stage of becoming free from the contamination of the material world. At such a time, a devotee makes friends with another devotee, and his engagement in material activities ceases completely. At that time, he attains the favor of the Lord and loses his faith in material civilization, which begins with Varnashram Dharma. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu speaks clearly of one becoming liberated from the Varnashram Dharma, the most exalted system of human civilization. At such a time, one feels himself to be perpetually the servant of Lord Krishna, a position taken by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself. Naham vipro nacha narapatir napi vaishya na shudro naham varni nacha grahapatir no vanasto yatirva kintu prodhyam nikhila paramananda purnamrita der gopi bhartu pada kamalayor dasana Dashaha. I am not a Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra. I am not a Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, or Sannyasi. What am I? I am the eternal servant of the servant of the servant of Lord Krishna. Through the disciplic succession, one can attain this conclusion, which is perfect elevation to the transcendental platform. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. So nice thing about devotional service, which Narad Muni is explaining. We are going to pause here since almost 7. And we'll continue reading this conversation next couple of days. And of course, we had Ram Navami last week. Yeah. So we are going to hear Bhai Pragat Kripala. Yeah. Yeah. And that's the part of the devotional service. Hearing the Katha, hearing the Kirtan is the part of devotional service, which is what is being explained right now. So we hear that it's like around 4 to 5 minutes, and we'll see you tomorrow. Yeah. So that's. And this is the voice of Ramesh Bhai Oja, very nicely.
माँ कौशल्या के समक्ष भगवान सबसे पहले चतुर्भुज रूप में प्रकट हुए। माँ कौशल्या प्रभु की स्तुति कर रही है। हर्षित मनहारी अद्भुत रूप विचारी। हर्षित महतारी मुनि मनहारी अद्भुत रूप विरामा तनु घन श्यामा निज आयुध भुज चारी। भूषण बनमाला नयन विशाला शोभा सिंधु भय प्रकट कृपाला दीन दयाला कौशल्या हितकारी। कह दुई कर जोरी स्तुति तोरी केहि विधि करो अनंता। ज्ञान भय प्रकट कृपाला दीन दयाला कौशल्या हितकारी। ब्रह्मांड निकाया निर्मित माया रोम रोम प्रतिभा सोमति डोली तजहु तात यह रूपा की जैसे सुलीला अति प्रिय शीला यह सुख परम अनुरूपा भय सुन बचन सुजाना रोदन ठाना होई बालक सुर भूपा चरित दिखावै हरि पद पावै दीन तरहि भव माँ कौशल्या ने भगवान की स्तुति करी। भगवान ने कथा सुनाया और माँ को समझाया कि मैं आपके घर पुत्र बनकर आया हूं। तो माँ ने कहा कि फिर ये रूप आपने परमेश्वर का बनाया है, आप पुत्र बन करके आओ। ये 4 भुजा वाले हमारे बच्चे नहीं होते, हमारे बच्चे 2 भुजा वाले होते हैं। भगवान 2 भुजा वाले बन गए। बोले हमारे बच्चे वस्त्राभूषण के साथ प्रकट नहीं होते। तो भगवान माया रहित मुकुंदा हो गए और फिर कहा कि हमारे बच्चे जब प्रकट होते हैं तो हंसते नहीं है, रोते हैं। तो सुनि बचन सुजाना रोदन ठाना। भगवान बालक के रूप में जब रुदन करने लगे तो विप्रधेनु सुर संदहित लीन मन मन अवतार निज इच्छा निमित तन माया मन गोपाल सिया रामचंद्र की जय, पवन सुत हनुमान की जय, उमापति महादेव की जय। बोलो भाई सब संतन।
Right, nice, right? This is from the live katha of Ramesh Bhaiji Oja in Bali, Indonesia. Very nice. Yeah, it's before a couple of years. So cool. Everyone have a night. We'll see you tomorrow 10 p.m. EST. Yeah, 7:30 India time. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare.